On either side of the periscope, we're going to have one of these Tim Holtz light bulbs. It's the larger size from this set of 10 light bulbs that he has. And then it's going to fit into a little cylinder like this, and that's how it will look on the top. So I've already made this one, as you can see, so let's make a second one. And so to do that, we'll start out with another 5/8 inch medium weight chipboard circle. And then here I've got a piece of lightweight chipboard that is bendy this way, and I've scored it at 1/8 inch intervals. And this piece is about 3 inches long, and we're going to need to cut it to length. And I've got a little scrap of cardstock here to use to help join that together. And then I'm going to use the border print from this journaling card that you can see I've been using for all sorts of purposes. But if you don't have the journaling cards, you can just use a scrap of whatever paper you like to go around the outside of the light bulb. So the light bulb itself has a little thing that protrudes down here in the bottom, so I'm going to cut a circle out of the center of this 5/8 inch circle just to help allow that to have some space to go into. So I'm just going to put this on a post-it like I've done for other small things, and with my 1/4 inch hole punch a hole in the center of that. So now I've got a hole in the center of my little circle here, and I'm just going to wrap this piece around of the lightweight chipboard and mark it on the bottom so I can cut it to length to fit around that circle. So I have this piece of the lightweight chipboard cut to length, and I'm just going to put this piece of cardstock on there to help join it, kind of bend it to the inside. It's short enough so that it won't interfere with this chipboard as we go around. And now I'll just put some glue around the bottom here. It will go on the outside, and a little glue on the edge there, and glue that up. And then I'll just set this little tube aside to dry, and we can work on the paper. So we need a strip of paper that is 3/4 of an inch tall to go around this little tube, and I'm going to use the end down here, and when I cut it, I'm going to cut it so that I get this light colored stripe that's on top of it as well. Now you may notice here that there's a light color stripe on the bottom, but there isn't that over here. So I'm going to cut a piece from this side and kind of piece it together just so that I'll have that light stripe on the bottom. Now obviously that's not necessary, I just like the look of it, so if you can't be bothered, that's no problem. Just cut a piece of 3/4 inch wide and go for it. So to do this paper piecing, I cut this end off, and I cut it just on the outside of that lighter stripe, and then I cut a 1/4 inch piece off the edge here, and this is the stripe that I'm going to use on the bottom. And I've used my blue marker on this edge here. Now to put this together, I want to end up with a piece that is 3/4 of an inch wide. So I'm just going to allow enough of a reveal of this stripe down here so that the total width of this piece becomes 3/4 of an inch. And I've backed both of these pieces with score tape so that I can easily put them together. So I'm going to put them together and create that piece that is 3/4 of an inch wide. So here's my finished piece, and to go around the tube and to have about a 1/4 of an inch overlap, I need a piece that is 2 5/8 inches long. So I'm just going to center this fish and then cut a piece that is 2 5/8 inches long. Now before I install this piece, I'm going to take my blue marker and go around the top edge of the tube and down a little bit on the sides and in the inside as well, and probably hit this bottom edge as well. And then I'll also use my marker on the ends of this piece of paper just so we don't have any white showing in the wrap. I'm going to start about a 1/4 of an inch on to the left of the seam on this tube, and then just wrap this paper around. Then once you have your paper on, go ahead and ink as you like. Stick the light bulb in to give it some support, and then you can give it some good burnishing. And then we can use some diamond glaze or glossy accents to as adhesive to attach the light bulb in here. Now it will hit on this bottom edge and maybe around these 2 points that stick out. The main tube is a little bit smaller than the tube, so anyway, put some glossy accents to keep that in there. Now be careful after you've put the glossy accents in that if you set them upright to dry, that you've got them on a scrap piece of paper or something in case some glossy accents wants to leak out of the hole in the bottom. And then we'll just put these two components aside for right now. Now we'll work on the eyes, and this is what a finished eye looks like. It's composed of several different layers. The first layer is a 1 5/8 inch circle of medium weight chipboard, and I've added a piece from the 6x6 pad onto it. It's the yellow with polka dots. Next we have a 1 1/4 inch circle, and this one is the very faint stripes. It comes from the 6x6 pad as well. And I backed that with score tape before I cut it out. Next I've cut a gear. This is the gear that it is. It comes from the gear head set. And I just cut that out of lightweight chipboard. And because sometimes it's hard to cut both lightweight chipboard and when it's covered with paper, I just cut this is the same gear out of the dark orange paper, and I backed it with score tape before I cut it out, and then I'll put these two together. And then finally, for the center of the eye, I've cut, this is from the 6x6 pad. Is the paper that reads as solid as faint stripes, and it's the darker blue, and it's cut just so it has enough gluing surface and goes right in the center of that gear. So we need to do a little prep before we put our layers together. I've already darkened the outside of this chipboard circle with my peacock feathers marker, and then I'll just do a little inking around the edges. Then on the 1 1/4 inch circle, I'm going to ink around the edges of that as well, because it does just a tiny bit want to peek out from behind the gear, and I don't want it to show. So I'll just ink those edges a little bit. Now we want to put this paper, decorative paper, onto this gear, and you'll need to keep turning it around until you find the spot where where they're cut both the same. Just keep turning it and you'll eventually find it. There it is. And because it's not perfectly symmetrical, and just remove the score tape backing and put that decorative paper on the gear. And then after I did that, I inked the edges. I went around with my blue marker on the edges and then hit the ends with some vintage photo. And then we can take our little blue circle and glue it on the back here in the center. And now we can layer, and I started by putting some wet glue on the back of the gear, and I'll center it on the cream circle. After I have that layered, I'll remove the score tape backing from this side and do my best to get that centered onto the large circle. And then finally give everything a good burnish. And then to install the eyes, put some wet glue on this surface here, and then center the eye and hold it on there with some pressure, and then allow that to set up. We're going to install a screw eye that can hold the center of a length of chain that the monocles get attached to. And so I've just taken a thin awl and started to drill a little hole here, and it is about, from the edge, it's probably about 3/16 of an inch away from that edge, and directly in line with the light tube. So once you have that hole drilled, then this is just a tiny Tim Holtz screw eye, and I'll put that into that hole. So I have here a length of chain. It's pretty thin. I would say it's no more, it's a little bit less than 1/8 of an inch wide, and it has an uneven number of links because I've added a jump ring to the center link, and then that jump ring is going to get attached to the screw eye that we just installed. And then the monocles come with jump rings, and I'll just attach the jump ring from the monocle to the end of the length of chain. And once we have the monocles attached to the length of chain, we can open up the jump ring and install it on the screw eye that we put in. So I've propped up the fish with a towel on a box so I can gently have it in a position where this eye is sitting at level, because now I want to add some little tiny drops of glossy accents around the rim of the monocle to put it in place. And when I look at these monocles, one side of the rim looks just a little bit bigger than the other one, so that's the one I'll put the tiny drops of glue on. And make sure don't have your chain twisted, that this is the one that's coming in this direction. So just put some tiny drops of glossy accents all the way around the rim of that monocle and let it set up until you're sure it's dry. And then once the first side is set up, turn and position the head so the other eye is facing up, and put dots of glue around that monocle and attach it down. So now we're ready to work on the teeth for the anglerfish, and on the page that has the lightweight chipboard cutting guide, I also added this little table that has a dowel cutting guide, and we're using 1/8 inch dowel. Now these are the lengths that I have, and I'll kind of tilt this up so you can see it, and we can see it in the completed photographs better. But if it's kind of like a snaggly tooth version, so if you like that, then you can use the dimensions that I've got indicated here in the guide, or else feel free, of course, to make them however you would like. Now I have this X-Acto saw and little mini miter box that I find very helpful when I'm cutting, especially a large amount of dowels like this. So as I showed you a moment ago, I have cut all of the dowels to length, and I saved this one to show you how I've been finishing them, or at least sanding them off. And this is the one, this is a 1 3/4. It goes in position number 9 on the top. And I should say that it says here position numbering starts in the back left, and that means that these teeth here by my thumb are number 1 on the top and number 1 on the bottom. So once you've cut your dowel to length, it's easier to put them in if they have a slight kind of point at the end. So I'm just using this little pencil sharpener and going around several times. It doesn't have to be sharp, just something that'll easily go into the hole. And then on the other end, I want to have kind of a rounded effect, and just I find it easy to do this if I kind of put the dowel in at an angle. Then I can just nick off the top with my sharpener, and that means I don't have as much sanding to do. And then I just use an emery board, or you could use sandpaper to just kind of twirl it around and get that to kind of a rounded profile on the top. Now I decided that I did not want to have sharp teeth, but of course if you wanted to have sharp teeth, you could just put the other end in the pencil sharpener as well and have sharp teeth. So now this is my last tooth, and this is just my dry fit, obviously, because they don't have any paint on them yet, but it just fits right up in here in this spot, and it should seat all the way up in there. So now we just need to paint. So I painted all of my dowels, and I used a combination of 2 colors. First I painted them all with wild honey, and then let that dry, and then I made kind of a watered down, slightly watered down version of scattered straw and put that over the top. And I think I'll like that color, but of course you can choose to paint them whatever color you desire. And then I've laid them all out here. These are the ones that are going in the top, starting with number 1, and these are the ones that are going in the bottom, starting with number 1. And here's my fish, and I will just put some glue in each hole. I'll start over here with number 1 and just work my way around and get them positioned how I would like them. So here are all the teeth installed. Now we're ready to install the periscope and the 2 light bulbs. But before I install the periscope, I've decided that I'd like to trim this bottom. So I've just cut another piece of this same trim that we used around before. And I've cut this piece 4.5 inches, and I've inked it, and then I can cut it to length as I go around. So I'll just install that right along the base here. So to install the periscope, we can just put a blob of wet glue on the bottom there and center it on our center fin and our tube here. And of course center it back and forth in the periscope base. And then for the light bulb holders, since I used these fish borders on here, I have one facing left and one facing right, so I'll put them on either side of the periscope like this. I'll probably put this seam so it's kind of slanted back maybe towards this back corner of the periscope on each side, just so that's probably the least noticeable way to put it on. And then I'm thinking about a 1/4 of an inch in from the ends of the periscope base, but you know, that's personal preference. And just put a blob of glue or a ring of glue on the bottom and put them on. So there are the light bulbs and the periscope installed. And finally, I want to do something to cover up the ends here of the wires and that connection there to the tube. I don't think that's very pretty how it is right now. So I've cut this little piece of border print, and it comes from this page, and I just cut a little slot here. Oh, this is probably about 3/8 of an inch wide and about 1 1/8 long, and I'm just going to put that on with some wet glue. And first I'm just going to train it to want to go in a cylinder shape by just rolling it around a scrap piece of my dowel. And once it's kind of trained to go in that shape, I'll just use some wet glue and put it around the end of the tube there. And here's that little ring of paper around the end of the light. So that completes the construction videos for the Anglerfish project. This project was a lot of fun to design and build, and I hope you've enjoyed seeing how it came together and would consider making one of your own. This is April with Craft Knife Chronicles. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.